Hello everybody, it is Ebontis, and in this video, my goal is to cover kind of all of the details that can come up when you're trying to unlock a Descendant. Now, some of them work in a bit of a different way, and your best way to access that information is going to be under Access Info, and you can pull up any Descendant and see what it takes to get them. Now, Bunny, you're going to get through the campaign, pretty straightforward, hard to miss, everybody's going to end up with her. Freyna, Sharen, and Blair, their parts that you need to take for research are direct farms. There are no materials that you need to research to acquire this piece to then take all of these pieces. You just get these directly with Freyna, Blair, and Sharen. They're all direct farms. Notice I have one of these, I have two of these, I have two other pieces to go. When it comes to pretty much all the rest from what I can tell, they're all going to function in a way where you need to acquire these materials to get this thing researched, acquire these materials to research this, acquire these materials to research this, acquire this, and then take all four of these pieces over to the researcher. So my goal is to cover all the different things that might come up. Everything from amorphous materials, how those work, where you might interact with those, void fragments, which you may have seen or need or understand how to get to, and all of the different types of things that you may need to go do to get any of those parts. So that's the goal in this video. So it's not gonna, I'm going to use Enzo as most of my example because I do think he should be a priority. And the main reason he should be a priority is because what he does. And if we go over to him to look, it's not clear unless you've been basically checking out like a bunch of other videos about vault farming, but you'll notice it says, efficiency increases when Enzo disarms the security of the vault, and rewards increase when this happens. And it truly is going to be one of those things that you should pretty much do any vault opening with him, and that's it. Especially on harder difficulty, no question. So I do recommend going after him first, but we'll have to kind of go around him a little bit. But as an example, it's still going to be able to hopefully carry over all the other information that you're going to need to get any of these Descendants. Now, before you get to farming any of the Descendants, my advice is go through the whole campaign. Do the entire campaign. One, you're going to unlock every single destination because depending on which Descendant you're going for, you may need to go to different Void Intercept battles or different destinations on different difficulties, for example. All of that could be a thing that you may want to do. Difficulties could help with farming. Most everything can be done on normal. Probably not all the ultimates, though, I don't think. And it is going to benefit you just to have everything done. The other reason you're going to want to be done with the campaign is if you can get some 90s, 80s, you know, level 100, if you go run a couple of hard missions, it's not too hard to get some weapons. When you go and farm, say, Agna Desert for a specific item, what you're going to notice is if this is a level 53 enemy that I'm fighting and I'm level 80, I can blast through these pretty quickly. So when it comes to farming and grinding for things on a bit more of a repetitive basis, being over-leveled is really, really going to help you out. So that introduction aside, let's jump in and talk about the specifics. All right, so now let's talk about which Descendants you're going to unlock and kind of the order to go for them. Now, whether it's Ajax, Lepic, or Viesa, whichever one you start off with, obviously you get that one. The other ones are going to be a little bit more involved in farming for because they have all these materials. I'm going to use Enzo for an example on that. Bunny, you're going to get as you go through the campaign. And Freyna, Sharen, and Blair work in a similar fashion that each of them have no materials required. They just have these like enhanced cells as a direct drop from a specific thing. So if you take Freyna, for example, who I already farmed for, she's got 3 different items. She's going to have the Vespers normal difficulty mission shelter have a 20% chance to drop her enhanced cells. So if you run this mission once or 5 times or 7 or 3, at some point you're going to get the enhanced cells to drop, and then you have that piece. You're good to go. Then if you go for the stabilizer, you're going to see that the Vespers normal mission Ruins path is where you're going to get that as a drop. And then for the Spiral Catalyst, you're going to see the Ruins underground entrance is where you're going to get that mission. So these 2 missions are here. The Ruins underground entrance, you can see again, 20% chance to drop. I think this one took me about 3 runs and I got it, so a little luckier here. I was unlucky on this one, and let me tell you why. This is an escort mission, so there's not really a way to speed it up. And again, 20% chance roll, but I think this one took me like 10 runs to complete. Now, while you're repeating anything that I'm going to explain through this one, you're going to be getting heat incinerator mods, or marksman mods, or reactors, or weapons. And you're going to be breaking a lot of that stuff down, or you're going to be breaking down duplicate mods, breaking down old weapons, and you're going to be getting materials from those that you're going to be using in a whole bunch of other stuff, so that's totally fine. But some missions are quicker than others, and we'll talk about the time of things later on, but if this is where you get it, this is the one you've got to farm. So that's the kind of the idea for Freyna when it comes to those three materials. Finally, for Freyna, her code is going to come from the Void Fusion Reactor, Sterile Land Rockfall Zone. Now, if you go here, you're going to see that I need the Amorphous Material Pattern Freyna. You're like, all right, well, where do I get that? I get that from Rockfall Vulgus Strategic Outposts. Now, the Vulgus Strategic Outpost, that is going to have a 20% chance to drop the Freyna Amorphous Material. It's also going to have a chance to drop the Amorphous Material Pattern 006. So you might get one of those, you might get neither, you might get, potentially both. We would, kind of roll the dice and see. But you'll probably run this a few times to be able to get what you need. Now, then you got to figure out how to open it. And that's where it comes to the amorphous materials themselves. So if you go here, and these materials that have a name, like the bunny and the Freyna ones, you'll notice when you open them, like when you interact with a reconstructed device, the Freyna code is a 100% chance drop rate, but the other one that could drop there might have been 006, and that one has a whole bunch of percentages for stuff. All of these come in percentages here, but Freyna is just going to be 100%. The question is, how do you open this? Well, if you come over here to the linked reconstruction device info, you're going to see that this reconstruction device for this material is going to come from the Void Fusion Reactor Sterile Land Rockfall Zone. So if I go to the map and I go to Sterile Land, and then we go to the Rockfall Zone, which is right next to where I was farming the Vulgus Strategic Outpost, you'll see the Void Fusion Reactor Sterile Land Rockfall Zone right here. And you can see it's actually going to require 12 monomer void shards and 3 polymer void shards for me to initiate this reactor. When I'm done with the interaction, that's when I'm actually going to be able to open the amorphous material. But again, there's nothing on this page right here that tells you that. That's why you need to check the amorphous materials location first. But the question you're probably wondering is, how do I get these void shards? Well, as you'll notice all over the place, that you're going to have these things called void fragment missions. And these, if you scroll down to the bottom, will tell you what they will drop. So this will drop one of each type of void shards, but this one requires fire. I don't have Lepic, so that's not one that I have a chance to interact with. This one over here is an electric one. I have Bunny, because I got that from the campaign pretty easily, and it's also level 10, so I'm way beyond that for power level, so that's one that I can easily farm. Now the nice thing is, and not always, but I would say a little higher than at least half the time, if there's a reactor in a zone, and then also a void fragment mission in a zone, sometimes you might want to check the one that's close to it, because this one drops 4 monomer and 1 polymer. Well, if I run that 3 times, I'm going to have 12 monomer and 3 polymer, which is exactly what I need. Now, obviously, early on, this one's a little more user-friendly than some of the stuff later on where it gets a little weird, but literally just come down here with Bunny, run this thing 3 times, and pretty much all you have to do is, if it says destructible only by skill, what that implies is I have to use Bunny's abilities to do electric damage to the actual, spire, and then it's going to have, some enemies that spawn for a little while, and then the next time it comes up, I got to do electric damage again to do another chunk of health to the void fragment. More enemies spawn, and then when it gets to the final one, I will break the void fragment fully, and then I will come down here, and it's going to give me these rewards guaranteed. Maybe it gives me some other stuff too. Cool. Do that 3 times, and honestly, these don't have a cooldown timer. Walk a little ways, turn around, it's probably going to spawn in, 20, 30 seconds. They're pretty fast. Or run away from it and run back if it's not spawning. Do that 3 times, and you can open it, and then when you open it, since it is a guarantee, when you open that void pattern, you're going to get the Freyna code. Now, what I'm going to do at this point is I'm going to cut over to some footage that I have of me actually interacting with the void reactor, so you can see what it looks like to interact with the amorphous material. So then, once you have enough shards that you've farmed, then you'll come over here, we'll go ahead and activate it, and these, again, I'm way over leveled, but there's usually just a couple of guys that spawn in, so you'll move to the operation zone, which is pretty much where I'm standing. You'll have the Vanguard guy show up, which is going to go down in, 4 bullets, And then you also have up here the tracker that shows up. It's just 2 enemies that I have to kill on this one. He managed to freeze me. And once it goes away, then you're going to have the chance to interact with what you need to. So this is the object, and again, this is the little globe thing I'm talking about. Whether it's at the end of a Colossus mission or anywhere else, you can see that I can use the reconstruction device, and I can choose which ones that I want to interact with. Now, if I have a Freyna one, that's just because I may have had an extra, but I've also got 006, so I'm just going to use this in as an example. When you click on any of these amorphous material in these instances, you can see what has a chance to drop. So I have a chance to get the Valby code, I can get the Restored Relic Polymer Some Blueprint, I can get Smithereens Blueprint, I can get the Ultimate Lepic Catalyst, or I can get an Energy Activator Blueprint. And you've got the percentages right here. If you have a shape stabilizer that matches with them, you can apply the shape stabilizer and it's going to change the percent drop on each of these things. Some will go down, some will go up typically, but I'm just going to shape this one at 006 just because I've already done Freyna. But at this point, if you pick Freyna, you're just straight up going to get the code. I don't need that again right now, so I'm going to pick this one for an example. We're going to shape this one. And I got the Smithereens Ultimate Blueprint. So I've got the blueprint for the weapon, which is probably one of multiple pieces I need for that weapon. So then once you've got the code, after doing the Void Fragment farm and then interacting with the reactor with the amorphous material, take the code, the catalyst, stabilizer, and the enhanced cells to the researcher in Albion. And I think it's like 16 hours later, you'll unlock your character. Sharen is going to be similar. You can see the acquisition here is the cells just come from this mission in the seed vault, and the stabilizer come from this mission in the chapel, and the catalyst will come from this mission, and the Sharen code also just straight up comes from a mission, like actually even easier than Freyna. Blair is going to be similar. It's going to be mission, 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 and mission. All of those two, if you just want to sit there and farm some missions directly for a little while to give yourself some options, those are pretty direct, pretty straightforward, not overly difficult to do. Now, when it comes to the next person you should go for, like you can work on Freyna, Sharen, Blair, give yourself a little variety so you're not farming like the same escort mission 10 times in a row, give yourself some other stuff to do. And honestly, if you look up like, hey, I know some of Freyna's stuff is going to be on Vespers, and then maybe Sharen, maybe she has some stuff on the same destination, like here's something on Agna Desert, okay, maybe I can go bounce back and forth between at least a couple things on the same destination so you're not repeating stuff too much. Now, the main reason I say Enzo should be your next one, and why I'm going to use him as the example for much of the rest of this, is because Enzo, as I told you in the beginning, has that vault interaction, and I'm going to show you in the very end of the video what it's like farming for, say, the thermal metallic foil, because you're going to have to open these encrypted storage and precise encrypted storage vaults, and what that looks like. But as of today, they actually made it better because you've got monster missions or mission monsters you can get it from as well. But we'll get to that towards the end of the video. So for now that you know Bunny will come from the campaign outside of your starter, Freyna, Sharen, and Blair, pretty direct farms that you go for, and then just go take those materials for research. Now let's talk about one of the more in-depth farms in Enzo. Now when it comes to the blue materials, silicone, nanopolymers, flectorite, monomolecular extractors, semi-permanent plasma, ceramic composite, all of those are standard materials, and they all just come from munitions or resource boxes on said destinations. So nanopolymers, these are both on Agna Desert. Monomolecular extractors, also on Agna Desert. Flectorite, that one's on White Knight Gulch. I think I've got another one in White Knight Gulch. Echo Swamp, Vespers, White Knight Gulch. If you got two on the same planet, I think most planets or destinations will have two different ones. And what they're going to come from, as I said, are munitions boxes, which you can find very simply by hitting your little scanner and looking for these little diamonds. If they show up, I'm going to kill these enemies so they don't mess with things. And this is why it benefits you to be over-leveled. And all of these is these little futuristic trash cans. If you open one up, the munitions will typically give you more than a resource box. So I got 83 nanopolymer there. I know I've got a resource box down here because I scouted this area a bit earlier. The resource boxes are going to be these things you've probably seen. They're the little orange boxes with the black triangle on them. And if you shoot them, you're going to get probably about a quarter to a third of the resources, depending on how much drop from the munitions. And when you pick those up, you can see nanopolymers, I got 26. So I got less than a third of what I got from the munitions. So the munitions, if you go scanning, are going to be, you know, there's a couple in this little cave area and stuff. We'll cover that in a second. But munitions versus resource boxes, that's the difference. Resource boxes and munitions can both drop the destination material, and most places have two. The difference is the munitions tubs, which you can scan for, like those two in there, are going to be just holding more. So as you're running around doing missions, that kind of thing, every so often, even if you like do a mission and then run to the next one as you're running, drop a couple scans as you go, pick up some of those munition tubs, and if you pick them up naturally, you'll have probably plenty that you need as long as you're doing it along the way. Makes it easier than farming them directly later on. Alright, so now that we've covered your standard materials, wherever destination you get them, resources, boxes, munitions, honestly, just while you're doing everything I show you, open those up and you'll probably be reasonable on those. If not, you know where to go get them. So now we'll talk about the rare resources. You've got these three rare resources, and then you're going to have your blueprints that kind of work in a different way. Your rare resources can come from different things. Now, Enzo specifically won't have any that come from vaults, as opposed to like Glay, I was working on the cooling metallic foil, and those types of things can come from the encrypted vaults and encrypted storage boxes and those things. The reason, again, Enzo is first is because he makes all of those easier, so that's why it's a priority, but you still gotta know how to get the rest. So, inorganic biogel. When it comes to this item specifically, we're going to be back to something where it says Mission Monster. Now, if you've seen Mission Monster on anything, typically what that implies is the yellow named and yellow health bar enemy, kind of like an elite for whatever thing that you're doing. And this one says Vespers, Normal Difficulty, Lumberyard, Vulgus Strategic Outpost. If you ever see a Vulgus Strategic Outpost, this is what you're going to be looking at. These structures right here. They look like a hollow cylinder with like 3 spires on each side. And they're going to have this look to them. They also can potentially be on a timer. They will have a timer on them once you finish them, of kind of a 5-minute cooldown. So my advice is if you're ever doing a Vulgus Strategic Outpost on any destination, see if there's anything else that you can work on while you're waiting on the cooldown, or if you have multiple that will work. Like I know specifically that this one and this one will both get the drop that I'm going for. I can bounce between these two destinations. And also one thing you can do is find these temporary like safe zone, the little tactical transporter things. They're usually closer towards the other side of a destination. Help you to unlock those as well. But again, this destination has these two that I can do. And they're pretty easy. If you're over leveled for them, if you're doing them on a harder difficulty, might want to go in public, see if you can get some help. But if you're by yourself, they're going to have a few enemies just hanging out inside. Not really anything you really got to worry about. And this is why being over leveled is nice. But as soon as you walk in across this barrier, you're going to activate everything, and what you need to do is typically defeat the enemies that are inside while you are destroying the 3 canisters. So I've got this one, and again, these things are so easy to kill because I'm way over leveled. That's why being high level is beneficial. But that one's that, B, and then A. Once that goes down, you're going to get the elite to spawn. And you'll know the elite because he's simply going to spawn right in the middle, and he's going to have the nice little yellow health bar and yellow name panel. When he goes down, you'll notice you get this little symbol, kind of like for a nut and bolt for construction materials. This is going to be like the washer nut look. And then when you walk over it, you're going to pick up the inorganic biogel. And that time I got 10. I've got 9, 10, 8, 7, somewhere in that decent drop rate. So that's where those are going to come from. And those are Vulgus Strategic Outposts. And specifically for this one, it's the 2 Vulgus Strategic Outposts on Vespers, on normal. That's where they can drop. And right now, if I come back out, this thing has a 5-minute cooldown. So I could come up here, do the same thing, maybe run one other mission, or maybe farm some void fragments, which we'll talk about in a minute, and then come back when this one's ready. Doesn't take too long for 5 minutes to pass, and you'll be running back through. Do that a few times, and when we go check how many materials that we're going to need, I need 58. So between those 2 missions, I'll run them, 6, 7 times, maybe 8 times, probably have what I need. While I'm doing that, I can run around, pick up destination materials. I can check what else needs to happen. So that's the first one. Now, Advanced Neural Circuit. This one is also going to come from mission monsters, but this one is set up in a different way. It's all of the missions on White Knight Gulch, and the thing about them is it lists not all of them, but a lot of them. So what I did, and I'm sure there's going to be guides for this, but I literally went through and just checked to see which missions had a low timer that were on this list. So if I check White Knight Gulch on normal, I can come in here and I can see that this one is a 3-minute mission. That's pretty damn fast. Now, if I come over here and I switch it over to hard, and then you check your access info, same thing will apply. It's just going to show the hard difficulty missions. and it's still going to count for this one. This is a 3-minute defense mission, but everything on a hard, is level 100. And when you kill any elites involved in this mission, you're going to get that as a drop rate. Now, if it's a hard mission, maybe there's multiple elites, or since it's 3 minutes long, maybe there's less. And that may be where if you find a 5-minute mission, or maybe a 15-minute mission that can also have these elites in that will drop the material, maybe running through a mission like this, as opposed to respawning the same thing over and over just to get one, but seeing like 4 or 5 in a longer mission, maybe this is a better use of your time. That's a little bit of testing you can do yourself. And that's why it's like, it's probably good to see, it's like, hey, are these like 3 or 4 missions in an area on that list? Okay, let me try them all, see which one it is. And then if I know that I need to acquire, I don't know, 90 of this thing, it's probably going to take me a little bit of farming. Let me, try a couple of these missions, see which one I like the feel of, see which difficulty is easier. Maybe if I'm just on, normal difficulty and this thing takes 3 minutes and it truly is 3 minutes just to knock this thing out, that might be the way I handle it. And then 3 minutes later, just do it again. And now the only reason I would tell you probably to do some of the other missions in variety, you're going to be getting other mods. Toxic Conductor, you might get that ultimate mod. You might get Defense Master. You might get Real Life Fighter. You might get Overwhelming HP. Some of these other items that can drop, especially when it comes to mods to help you look into certain builds and certain, setups that you might for all your different Descendants, it may benefit you just running other missions to have a chance to do those as opposed to doing this over and over. Especially if you run this like 5 times, you get the mods that you wanted, and you're like, all right, maybe I could try the 5-minute one, see if I can get a couple of these. That might benefit you a little bit more. So that's where it comes to having a little bit of variety. But when it comes to mission monster and a big list like this, and it's just normal missions typically, just those like kind of generic ones that are open world, not the 20-minute ones that are at the end of a little mini zone. This type of stuff, like Fortress Outskirts, this one up here, this one's going to be 15 minutes. Now, it's not one of like the specific missions like the little orb like this, which are the 20-minute big missions, but this is still a 15-minute mission, and it's going to take a little while because you have to capture 3 zones and do all of that. So checking your time and, seeing what is fastest to farm, that's where you're going to get the benefits from. Finally, if we come down to, say, the positive ion particles, down here, same principle is going to apply. We've got normal, missions, and I've got 6 different ones to pick from. Now, if I go to, say, the surveillance location, I can see that this one's 4 minutes long. And I can see that maybe Rock Cave Base is 10 minutes long. Same principle. This is where I'm going to go for probably the 4-minute mission. But if I want to mix it up, maybe make a quick note of which ones work and which ones don't. And maybe try to bounce between some of the quicker ones to make my life a little bit better. So when it comes to those types of resources, outside of the vaults, which I will cover at the end of the video, you might see stuff like this. Now, when it comes to amorphous materials, we covered those a little bit, but I want to go a little more in-depth in amorphous materials when it comes to the cell blueprints, the stabilizer blueprints, and the catalyst blueprints, because you're going to have like 4 different options for these things, and typically 4 different amorphous materials. So I want to use the top one here as an example of kind of the way for you to approach what type of grind you want to go for, what percentages to look at, and what you think is going to be the best use of your time. So for Enzo's Enhanced Cells Blueprint, you've got options in how to acquire this. 3 different ones. So the first is going to be Amorphous Material 003, and you're going to use the Grave Walker to Colossus fight to actually open this amorphous material. And then you can see that this Amorphous Material Pattern 003 comes from the Kingston Normal Slumber Valley mission. Now, if I check the rewards, I can see Pattern 003, 100% chance drop rate. So if I run this mission 5 times, I'm going to get 5 of these things. So my guess is if I check my consumables, come over here to my Amorphous Materials, I'm probably going to have, right here, I've got 3. I've got 5, I've got 2, but I've got 1 of these because I did the mission. Now, once you have acquired that, then you get to check in what the drop rates are going to be like. So, if I come in here and I know this one's going to come from here, then you're like, okay, so I know I need to acquire 003. Then we're going to pull up 003's information, as we did before for Freyna, but this is where it gets to be a bit more interesting. And this is where you can see that 003 has a 6% chance to turn into the Enzo Enhanced Cells Blueprint. Now, the other thing you need to check is, how do I open this material pattern? How do I open 003? Well, to open this one, and to, like, the reconstruction device that I'm going to use, like I did previously for Freyna, I'm going to have to beat Gravewalker to open this material pattern. Now, being as I beat the campaign, my stuff's at level 190, 80, and all that type of stuff, if I'm going to go fight Gravewalker, and he's level 10, I could do that solo with an arm tied behind my back and probably just point my machine gun at him and he'll go down really fast. I cannot imagine that is going to be a difficult fight. So that's not going to be a hard thing to farm. That is going to probably be just a low dice roll, and it's something you might have to run that 20-minute mission to get that material pattern. You might have to run that mission a lot of times because 6% chance to have this turn into exactly what you need, that's kind of low. So what's an alternative if you don't find that one appealing? Well, the next one we get to pattern 050. Now that is acquired from the Fortress Normal Mission Quarantine Zone. That's still a 20-minute mission. It is 100% drop rate, but this is a level 87 mission. This is probably going to take you probably about the full 20 minutes to do, if I had to guess. Now, you also have a chance at some higher level reactors because those are going to be dropping in more of the mid 80s. You have some chance at some shape stabilizers by doing this. You have a chance at the magnetic bulwark, which I don't even know what that does. You can go look it up if you want to. Special site mods. You're going to have some more interesting mods up on these higher difficulty missions, but also you will always, every time you finish it, as long as you do it, and I would probably do some of these higher missions in a group as opposed to private, level 50, beat it, and you're good. But you know in the fortress area, this stuff is a bit more intense because it's higher level. Now, the other thing to check is if we get the Amorphous Material Pattern 050, and you check, where do I interact with that thing? Well, first thing we're going to look at, what's the drop rate? So here I can see the Enzo Enhanced Cell Blueprint is 15%, so a higher drop rate than the previous one. But when you check the linked reconstruction device, aka the thing it's like, what do I have to finish to get the reconstruction device to show up? I have to beat the Hangman. Now, if you haven't tried the Hangman, FYI for anybody who hasn't quite done that yet, if you go to fight the Hangman, the dude is level 95. Just by running hard mode missions, you only get gear that's 100. It is only public, and there's mechanics involved in this one that get to be a little bonkers. Now, yes, you can open 50, but you have to actually beat this thing. Not an easy task, and we're still a 15% drop rate. Not the best, but if you beat it, it's better than the previous one. But is it easier to farm a very easy mission by yourself and then solo Gravewalker with your eyes closed over and over, or doing a level 87 mission and then try and public match into a Hanged Man level 95 Colossus fight? Unless you're just matching with all god tier people. I mean, granted, you have to beat the campaign, but if people are just coming out of the campaign with like level 92 or 93 and they try and go straight into this, some of these public matches not going to be that great. So lower drop rate, better drop rate, but still hard. But we have a third option. We actually have a fourth. I just don't have access to it yet. Third option is going to be the Void Fusion Reactor, Agna Desert, Mirage Stone Deposit. So if we go here, we're going to see we're looking for Amorphous Material Pattern 28. And we're going to get that from the Vulgus Strategic Outpost right here. Same thing that I just got done showing you guys. The Vulgus Strategic Outpost is just one of those little, hollow cylinders. Enemies spawn in, kill it. Enemies here are level 53. I'm still going to be able to kill this thing very quickly. It is not a guaranteed drop rate. We're just talking about a 20% drop rate. So I could do this thing 4 or 5 times and maybe get one of these. Now, I do get a chance at a shape stabilizer, dopaminergenic active for a mod. Some of these names are ridiculous. And a couple other random things in here as well. So I get a chance at some other stuff, but there's no guarantee by doing this mission that I'm going to get the drop that I need. The difference is if you go into look at Amorphous Material Pattern 28, we're going to see that the Enzo Enhanced Cells Blueprint is a 38% chance to drop. It is the highest option, it is one of the 2 highest options and way above everything else that we've seen. 6% and 15%, pretty low drop rates, but guaranteed source for the drop and then a guaranteed source for the fight. The Gravewalker is going to be the least. This one's going to be a little bit more manageable, but to get the Material Pattern 28 to drop, 20% chance. But if you do get it to drop, and then the other thing is you need to take it to the Void Fusion Reactor. Well, Agna Desert Mirage Stone Void Fusion Reactor, we go where we're looking here. Sorry. Sometimes going between these maps is a bit crazy. So here's Mirage Stone. We need to go to the reactor, and it says you need 12 monomer void shards and 3 polymer. Okay. Now, typically, if you have a Void Fusion Reactor, there's probably a Void Fragment thing that's near it that's probably going to drop what you need. This one, for example, is not one of those because it just drops one of each of the type. So if I'm looking for monomer and polymer, I actually know, because I looked earlier, I can take Bunny up here, and I can get monomer and polymer by farming this one. Then if I get, if I run this 3 times, I get enough shards to interact with this one, kill the couple of enemies that spawn, and from there I can open 28, which would give me, again, a 36% chance, I think it's 36% chance, to get the item I need. So you have a 20% chance for the material to drop, then you need to go farm the void fragments to be able to actually interact with the thing that's going to open it, and then when you open it, you get a 36% chance. So if you're looking at all 3 of these and going, I don't love all of them, this is part of what a free-to-play game is going to be like. This is where the grind comes in, and this is where sometimes some people may look at, like, what's it going to cost for me to buy that instead? What is your time worth? Do you just want to grind it out? That's kind of a thing. If you just want, like, an easy grind where you could throw on, like, a Netflix show, you could go farm Kingston, Normal, Slumber Valley, go farm a bunch of these, and then go take them into the Gravewalker fight over and over and over, and that's going to be probably the easiest. Mindless, but it is a low drop rate. Hanged Man is going to be difficult, and I think the level 87 mission plus a Hanged Man fight and still only a 15% chance, probably not the best option. Now, I can't check the intercept battle Swamp Walker with Amorphous Material Pattern 97, but we can look at 97 just to see what we're going to be dealing with. So if we check 97, you can see Enzo's Enhanced Cell Blueprint here is going to be a 20% chance, but to do that, I've got to do a hard version of a Colossus fight, which is not going to be any easier than Hanged Man, so I don't know if that one's any better. So at that point, you've got the option of probably either doing the Gravewalker setup, or doing the Void Fusion Reactor, farming for your Void Fragments with Bunny, going to, drop that one. And this one is a 36% chance or 38% or something like that. So maybe you don't need to do that farm too many times. But it is one of those where the earlier dice rolls against you are against you, but once you open it, you do have a higher chance. So your opening is going to be one of those things where when you start opening the the amorphous materials, that's where your chances are going to be the highest versus these other 2. But getting to that point will probably take you a lot more dice rolls. So that is kind of why I'm going through all of these steps to show you, take a look at all of your options. When it comes to the materials, they're pretty straightforward. Just see which missions are probably shorter. When it comes to the stabilizer blueprint, for example, similar things are going to happen. This is going to be Fortress, Heart of the Fortress. You're going to run that mission one time. You're always going to get it, but then you have to go fight the Hanged Man for that option. And then you're going to come over here and you're going to see the Pyromaniac. Not quite as bad. White Knight Gulch. Now this one's different because this is the 30-minute kind of wave-based thing, and then the farther you get into it, the better drop rate you have for the actual amorphous materials. But people tend to kind of overextend on these wave-based things, and I've only typically got to about wave like 6-ish, somewhere in the middle. People tend to get a little messy on those. So that's not even a guarantee that you'll get it. But if you have, like a mid-level one and you want to level up another Descendant that you got, that's not a bad way to do it. And then here, you've got hard mode Abyssal Void Swamp Reactor, so you're at a Swamp Reactor farm. Or you come down here, Void Fusion Reactor, High Ghost Base. We're looking for pattern number 40. And the Void Strategic Outpost, we're looking for, again, pattern 40, 20% chance. And then if you look in how to work with number 40, you're going to come here and see that Enzo Stabilizer Blueprint is, again, at 38%. So it's going to take you a little bit more of a grind to acquire the item, but then to open the item at the Void Fusion Reactor, when you do open it, the drop chance is going to be higher. So I don't need to go through every single piece of everything, but that will generally cover your blue standard materials, munitions, and supply boxes. Your rare materials, depending on who you're looking at, any of these things could be coming from mission monsters. They could be coming from regular mission monsters versus other things. They also could be coming from the vaults, which I will show you here in just a second, because any of these encrypted vaults have a whole process to them, and that's kind of the last thing I'll show you. And then when it comes to your blueprints, you're going to be dealing with amorphous materials from different sources, and it's kind of all in the statistics of which is the easiest grind for you, and depending on which Honestly, it could depend on which one of the Descendants you started with, because when it comes to farming Void Shards, somebody like Lepic, who has fire skills, is actually able to seemingly access a lot of the ones I was looking at, but I'm sure it's like, you know, grass is greener, because maybe the ones that he's looking at, he might need the non-attribute like Ajax would have, so it's probably all over the place on those. I do have spreadsheets I will link that will both tell you like the location, and again, this isn't a spreadsheet I made, it's just a spreadsheet that got linked to me, but it does tell you how many of each shard drop in each place on normal and hard difficulty, what location they're in, and what basically what element they're going to need. And if you know that information, you can at least look through and be like, I know I can go to this one destination with, say, Ajax as non-attribute, and if I farm this one, at least with that, I know I'm going to get these drops. And between Ajax and Bunny, and then if you can probably get one of these other ones like Blair, Sharen, I don't feel like Freyna's toxic, so she'll give you like a third damage type. Between Bunny, Ajax, and Freyna, I typically have some way to go after it. Of course, if you had VS or Lepic, those would be your other two damage types, minus the other ones, so it depends on who you start with. But so far, between those, I've been able to find some place to farm for those Void Shards. But again, you're going to farm those Void Shards over and over to try and get up enough shards, so when you take a couple of those Amorphous Materials to the Void Reactors, you open Amorphous Material with the Void Shards, maybe you don't get it. Well, you open another Reactor with the Void Shards, and then you open the Amorphous Material, maybe you don't get it on that one. And then you do a third one, maybe you get it, maybe you don't. So stockpiling those things might not be a bad idea, because once you're done kind of doing all your farming, then you can go try and turn all of them in. Now, the final thing I did mention is I want to talk about the vaults that you're going to open and go through, and I've got a whole different piece of the video about the sound effects to look for, how to hunt them down, and actually a patch as of today, literally this morning, that changed how some of those materials can be acquired as well. So let's get into that. So as I mentioned, Enzo is the guy you want to have to farm any of the vault-related objects. So once you've got him unlocked, many of the others may have something that needs vault searching. So cooling metallic foil, for example, could be one. Coming down here to Jabber, the thermal metallic foil could be another. In the Echo Swamp, and you'll see you've got encrypted storage boxes, precise encrypted vault, which is just basically the second tier. And then the third is the ultra precise. Apparently I'm going to get shot. How? I don't even know. So what those are going to imply is that you need to open a vault. Now, as of today, they buffed up the amount of resources you get from the vault by like 300%. It was like 1 to 2 with making this kind of farm pretty awful. They bumped it up by like 300%. So I've seen like 5 to 7 on some of these, and I haven't even done an ultra precise one yet. Now, I will tell you, I've probably made it through a precision encrypted vault, and the example I'm going to use is one of those. The regular encrypted without Enzo is very doable. It's just like one click. The precise, a little bit more. I'll try and make sure I get it right. I would not waste an ultra precise encrypted vault without Enzo, because you run the risk of losing a key, and that's just not a great feeling because those things are pretty rare. They did also add the mission monsters having a chance to drop, or basically being a drop for the material. And it's the same thing, the mission monsters, typically the ultra yellow bar enemies, just like we discussed before. And most of the missions in the areas you can see are going to have a drop chance for them. Not all of them probably, but most. So I would check and see if you're going to go farm, see which one's got a quick farm rate to them. So if you check like the Tree of Truth, this one takes 5 minutes or less, farm this over and over. You might get some of your drop there, and that might be quicker than farming a vault, that's up to you. But if you've got the keys, opening the vaults also is going to be a good idea. Because when you open the vault, especially if you open, like, say, a hard level one with Enzo and you get to that point, you get, like, people are showing 70,000 Kuiper shards dropping from these things. As you use Kuiper shards for a lot of stuff, not a bad thing to do that every so often. You can check your consumables to see the keys that you've got. And I don't have any of the base level ones because I just use those trying to record, but I forgot to hit the record button. But I've got the second tier, I've got 5 precision code, and I've got 3 ultra precision code analyzers. The analyzers are for normal difficulty, and there's a different name for the hard mode ones. So if you go into hard mode difficulty, you need the keys for hard mode before you go searching. But especially if you're on hard mode, make sure you have Enzo to open the vaults because he's going to make your life a lot better. So that's how you get the keys. The keys truly are just random monster drops. They come from anywhere. Notice it says mission monster, and it's basically, I swear, every mission in the entire game. Same exact list of missions for this one, and if I had the other one, it'd be the same. Truly just every mission monster for, I swear, almost every mission in the game. Maybe not every, but most of them. So it is truly just a random drop, which is why I'm glad they added the mission monsters, because it's not something you can readily farm, and if it's a piece you need, that kind of wasn't feeling great. So, when we talk about finding a vault, that is where it gets interesting. Now, currently, on my memory here, I've got my ESIF search radius boosted by 52%. If you see any items and external components that have this modifier, earmark them. Even if they're lower, they're something that you might find later on to be very helpful, because if that ESIF search radius, if you're hunting for vaults, you might want to save one of those, because all these ESIF search radius here is 47%. It's only level 79, but that would still be something to hold on to, because if you're just vault hunting, you're probably over-leveled for a lot of what you're going to be looking through, so you may as well throw that on there to make it better. Now, what you're going to be going for, and I'm going to turn up the sound here to make this hopefully easier to hear, when you use your ESIF scan, the base level ESIF sound sounds like this. It's just kind of the digital click, so you hear the bink, and then like a clicking sound, and then you hear like the scanning, like zzz. That sound means you are not in the radius, there is not a vault within your search radius. Pretty straightforward, that's what that means. So it is that clicky sound, and then kind of the digital zzz, buzzing sound. Now, my scanning radius is pretty big, and I know where one of the vaults is going to be, so if I move forward just a little bit down this ramp, we're going to get a different tone. And I'll explain why I'm facing to the side here in a minute. Now the sound has like a low beep. It's like doot. And then it has this buzzing scan, so it's like doot, zh, doot. So your difference between these two, not in my search radius, it's that just the click, and then over here we have the kind of first lower sonar ping. Boop. Now that means you are within range of your scan, but you are not facing one. If you turn and you face where one's going to be, so somewhere in my field of view, there is one. Now you get a true, what sounds like a movie sonar ping, like bing, 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 bing. Very different sound from the other two. So now you've got the not facing the right direction with the doot single versus the big pulse. That one's pretty straightforward. So I know, then I can start narrowing it down. Is it this direction? No. Is it this direction? Nope. So it is going to be somewhere towards forward. So as you get closer, and when you get really close, if you have headphones on or like stereo speakers, it does actually have directional audio as well, which makes a nice difference when you get closer. Now I know where this thing is, so I'm running to it. So again, all right, so now I'm out here. Is that over there? No. Over there? No, but still that same little bing. But then if I'm this direction, that's getting closer. Now if I put where I know it is on the right side of my screen, the sound is very much in just my right headphone. If I turn it over to the left-hand side of my screen, it's very much on my left earbud, or earphone. So it is directional when you get closer. So try and give that a second. Like I know it's right behind this wall. So it's very much on the right side. Not quite there. Left side. And I know, because I found it earlier, it's tucked right around this corner right here. So this is the little vault guy. You'll walk up, you'll see him. And this is the precision code analyzer. It's blue instead of purple, so it's going to be the second tier. Now, when you open this thing up, what's going to happen is a little mini game. Little red mark spins around a dial, and you need to stop the dial in the proper zone. When you have Enzo equipped, it goes slower. The zones are bigger. And while the precision code analyzer is manageable without Enzo, the ultra precision, I really wouldn't use one of those keys unless you're on Enzo, as I said. So I'm going to show you what this looks like. There are two different key presses. Mine is left or right mouse button, so you got to be careful which one you got to press. And believe me, I messed that one up too. I don't know the buttons on console, but make sure you kind of pay attention to what the options are. So we're going to open this one up. So I've got right mouse button in that little radius. I've got left mouse button in this little radius. Left mouse button there, and I've got right mouse button over here. Typically those are about 4, and you can't miss one, because if you miss one, you're kind of screwed. So I got 11 thermal foil there. Previously, I probably would have got like 4. So the buff they recently did to make that drop rate better truly is totally different, because I just got 11, and that's the first. I would only need to find 3 of those at that level, I'd be done. So bumping the drop rate is great, but also having the mission monsters now have a chance to drop these as well is also really beneficial. So everything else when it comes to, you know, finding an amorphous material pattern, figuring out where to get it from the Vulgus Strategic Outpost. And then if you know that, like, I'm going to take pattern 71 that I'm looking for, that's going to be the Jaber Spiral Catalyst that I was looking for, and I can see that I need to go do the, on hard mode, the Abyssal Void Fusion Reactor in Vesper's Ruins takes you there. So now, hopefully, with the previous explanations I went through with Enzo, and also with Freyna, between both of those and then the vaults, I can't imagine there's a lot that you're going to face of an ingredient for any of these Descendants that hopefully you know how to find. The biggest thing is, if you've got an amorphous material and you're not entirely sure, go check out the list, see what the, you know, see what the drop rates are. Is it going to give you a good percentage of what you're going for? Is the farm of that thing going to be easier? And then also, what activity is it linked to? Is it going to be linked to a, you know, a Void Fusion Reactor? Is it going to be linked to a Colossus? Track that stuff down, figure out what the process is going to be to farm this thing. And hopefully that clears up how you can get every single one of these. Is there going to be a lot of farming and low percentage drop rates on some of these? Absolutely. That is why this is a free-to-play game. But hopefully now you know how to go about acquiring all these things, and you can decide if you want to farm for them. But hopefully with all of this information, you guys are set up to be able to go after any of the Descendants you want, and hopefully you have a lot of success in what you're farming for. If you guys did enjoy a video, drop a like below, leave a comment if there's some major piece of this process I forgot. If there's a really important one, I'll put a pinned comment down there that kind of summarizes anything I missed. If you want to support the channel, hit that subscribe button, hit the alert bell. You'll get more videos from me, which hopefully you enjoyed this one, so that will be a good thing. And if you want to find me on Twitch or Twitter, you can find me over there as well. But thank you guys for watching. I know this was a long, detailed one, but hopefully now you've got all the information you need to go have some success yourself. Good luck, and I'll see you soon.